Hey, shalom, 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 Israel. Most High in Christ bless. Hey, man, it's been a while since I've seen some of you brothers and sisters. I pray y'all doing all right. We back in the building. You know, every week I like to dig deep into a meditation. That's why I call it Midweek Meditations, because by the middle of the week, I'm trying to get over the hump. So, I'm just wanting to share these things with you guys, what I be reading in the scriptures and what really kind of motivates me and helps me get past, all the things that's going on throughout the week. Making it to the Sabbath day, that day of rest. So, I pray that you guys are happy to see me back on this thing. And for those who are here, please share the broadcast or whatnot, because, it's good when people can sharpen each other's iron. It's good when people can get a little inspiration from what someone else is going through or what someone else is reading about and say, you know what? That's a good thought. So I want to go into midweek meditations today, y'all. Y'all going to ride with me today, get a little bit of these scriptures and, focus on the things that we read, meditate therein, and then apply them to our regular everyday life so we can improve ourselves daily. You don't have to wait till Christ return and the kingdom to be established for you to begin to get yourself right. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to meditate. So midweek meditations, we coming back every week. In the middle of the week, smack dab in the middle, we're going to meditate together. So today we're going to talk about staying strong when being forced to do wrong. Staying strong when being forced to do wrong. Now, I started meditating on this last week as I, get into the scriptures with my wife. The scriptures tell you that you're supposed to dwell with your wife according to knowledge. And I had her doing her own reading, focusing on the foremothers that she can read and take guidance from. And she brought up one of my favorite chapters in the Bible, in 2nd Ezra, chapter 7, and that encouraged me to start at chapter 6. So we're going to read 2nd Ezra chapter 6 today and figure out and learn from our forefathers about staying strong when being forced to do wrong. Staying strong when being forced to do wrong. If y'all can just get with me in 2nd Ezra. Actually, no, we're going to go to 2nd Maccabees. 2nd Maccabees chapter 6. So let's go ahead and read 2nd Maccabees chapter 6. And we're going to see what I'm meditating on. 2nd Maccabees chapter 6 verse 1. Not long after this, the king sent an old man of Athens to compel the Jews to depart from the laws of their fathers and not to live after the laws of God. Now, brothers, sisters, when you're being compelled to do something, it ain't just no, hey, you mind doing this? There's some strong effort put into making someone change their way and compel them to do something different than what they would normally do. It says to compel the Jews to depart from from the laws of their fathers and to not live after the laws of God. Now, if you really know the Bible, if you really know that God is your God as the Israelites, the God of the Israelites and none else, there's a lot that you receive, a lot of benefit that you receive from keeping the laws of your fathers, that you receive from keeping the laws of God. So to compel someone to do the opposite, it's got to be a strong case that's being made and a not something to easily reject. So it says, verse 2, and to pollute also the temple in Jerusalem, and to call it the temple of Jupiter Olympus, and that in Gerizim of Jupiter, the defender of strangers, as they did desire that dwelt in the place. The coming in of this mischief was sore and grievous to the people. So compelling the Jews, compelling the Israelites, compelling our people to do the opposite of what God told them to do, to transgress the laws of their forefathers, was very sore and grievous to the people. Why was it so sore and grievous? Because guess what? We all know, right, as Israelites, that when we keep our laws, the heathen know as well, that when we keep our laws, our God fights for us. When we keep our laws, there's no one that can come against us. But when we transgress the laws, when we end up in sin, we up in a situation that makes it very difficult to overcome the nations. So it was very sore and very grievous to the people. For the temple was filled with riot and reveling by the Gentiles, who dallied with harlots, and had to do the women within the circuit of the holy places, and besides that, brought in things that were not lawful. Something that we should not be doing is dallying with harlots. We should not be in the midst of fornication. We should not be in the midst of adultery. We should only be dealing in the sense of husband and wife. We should only be dealing in the sense of a lawful marriage that the Lord has put together. But yet, when we dealt with the heathen, when we dealt with people who did not want us to keep God's laws, we began to dally in harlots. We began to partake in that. Just think about that in your normal everyday life. When you're around the wrong people, idolatry, fornication, all type of things, all type of manner of mischief ends up coming up, just like we're seeing here in the Bible. So it says, and besides that, brought in things that were not lawful. There's so many things that are not lawful, whether it be the food that you eat, and we ended up in a situation where we had to deal with that. The altar also was filled with profane things which the law forbid. Neither was it lawful for a man to keep Sabbath days or ancient feasts or profess himself at all to be a Jew. So we're in a situation now where it's becoming a law that you cannot keep the laws of God, that you cannot profess to be who you really are. You have to call yourself something outside of the name that God gave you. You're supposed to be a child of God, but now your name no longer links with that. So I meditated on this. I'm like, wow, this is what was happening back in the time of the Maccabees. This was what was happening back in the time where the Greeks were in power. And yet, this is the same thing that's happening in modern day times today. You don't even get an opportunity on your job application to pick from the nation that you are. You're just going to have to pick other. Because they only give you a couple of options. And those options are none of the options that God called you. When you go to the store and you're searching for food, mostly every food that you have on the counter, on the shelves, in the freezer section, wherever it is all been tampered with and has pork in it. For example, you want beef sausage. Who thinks that they're going to find pork casing on their beef sausage, on their chicken sausage? Who thinks that they're going to find different unlawful things in candy and ice cream and stuff like that? But yet, that's the way the society has made it to where it is hard for you to keep God's laws. They do everything to force you against keeping God's laws. So, as we read on, neither was it lawful for a man to keep Sabbath days or ancient feasts, such as the new moon as it is today. They wasn't giving us the opportunity to do that. We have to work on a day like this. To keep Sabbath days or ancient feasts or profess himself at all to be a Jew. And in the day of the king's birth, every month, they were brought by bitter constraint to eat of the sacrifices. And when the feast of Bacchus was kept, the Jews were compelled to go in procession to Bacchus carrying ivy. Now I want to point this out too, because in the day of the king's birth, we were bought by bitter constraint. When it was someone's birthday, it wasn't a celebration that we enjoyed. When it was the heathen celebration birthday, we were in bitter constraints, being forced to go against our God. In a position to where we were not comfortable, we were not excited, we were not happy, we were not popping bottles, we were not having a great time. There was no cake for that person that was given to you. It was bitter constraint. It was a hard, terrible day for us when it was someone's birthday. Verse 8, moreover, there went out a decree to the neighbor cities of the heathen by the suggestion of Ptolemy. Y'all got to understand that this book, this Bible, is a history book. If you know anything about history from the schools that you attended, Ptolemy is a real figure. So we know that this is a real account of history because it is talking about something that, even though you've heard about it in your history books at school, it was watered down to remove some of the important information so that you would know who you are. Remember that the Apocrypha was removed. And by removing it, it helped us forget who we really are, because we lost the missing link of the Greek captivity, where our nationality was stripped from us. So, by suggestion of Ptolemy against the Jews, that they should observe the same fashions and be partakers of their sacrifice. And whoso would not conform themselves to the manner of the Gentiles should be put to death. Then might a man have seen the present misery. So we were forced to do what everyone else is doing. In modern day time, it may not seem as harsh as it's being read about here in the Bible, but we're forced to keep the feast of America. We're forced to keep the feast of the Gentiles. When you come to America, when any nationality of people come from wherever they're coming from all around the world, they begin to lose their customs and adopt the American customs, adopt the customs of this society. So why do you think we celebrate Christmas, Thanksgiving, 4th of July? Why do you think these days what else? Halloween, Valentine's Day. Some of you just broke your bank trying to please somebody with hearts of old candy, teddy bears. Don't nobody want that stuff, but you feel compelled to do so because if you don't do it, you're the one that's going to look strange. That you're not running to the same reveling and rioting that everyone else is doing. So as I meditated on it, I'm like, man, this sure is modern day society. No, I'm not being brought by bitter constraint at this moment, but you got to understand that once we've adopted the custom, you don't have to bring them by bitter constraint and force them. We already are used to doing it. It becomes innate for us. Our parents taught us and our grandparents taught them. And so now, for those of you who know that you're Israelites, right now you're online and you're realizing that, you know what? The only reason I don't do it is because I came back to my laws. But prior to that, the laws were gone from me. They were not taught to me by my foreparents. These were not things I was used to keeping. And for the few of you who actually grew up in the truth, for the most part, I can guarantee that every one of you that did grow up like you were born into the truth, that you've grown in your understanding and began to do more and more righteousness or understand better. Some of you might have digressed and went back the other way because of the pressures of this world. But for others, you might have once kept birthdays and once kept Valentine's Day, but you knew you were Israel. But over time, you said, you know what? That's not the custom of my people. So it said, and whoso would not conform, we're at verse 9, would not conform themselves to the manner of the Gentiles should be put to death. Then might a man have seen the present misery. For there were 2 women brought who had circumcised their children, whom when they had openly led round about the city, the babes hanging at their breasts, they cast them down headlong from the wall. Now that's the type of bitter constraint that we're talking about here. This ain't just time out. This ain't just a moment of discomfort. People are getting tossed headlong from the wall. Meaning what? Put to death for not keeping God's laws. For continuing to keep God's laws. For not conforming to the manner of the Gentiles. You may have been asked the question once upon a time, if a gun was put to your head, would you deny Christ? Well, these people were in a situation where they had to decide if they were going to deny the laws of God or profess them boldly in the midst of a situation where they could get put to death. Verse 11. And others that had run together into cause nearby to keep the Sabbath day secretly. You see, people had to keep the Sabbath day secretly. You are lucky that you now have an opportunity to keep the Sabbath day openly. Now, some of you may feel that you have to secretly conform to the laws of God because you don't want the heathen, the Gentiles, the nations to know. You don't want your boss to know that you keep God's laws. You don't want your boss to know that you realize that you're God's chosen people and you're special above all. But this is what these people had to do because they didn't want to get put to death. Are you in danger of getting put to death by professing who you are? Read on. I'm going to do that. I'm going to read on. I'm talking like I have a reader. And others that had run together into cause nearby to keep the Sabbath day secretly, being discovered to Philip, were all burnt together. If they were discovered keeping the Sabbath day, they were burned alive together, because they made a concession to help themselves for the honor of the most sacred day. Now, Well, hold on, let's not pass it up. The Sabbath is a most sacred day. Well, the Bible tells us to remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, and yet the average Christian, the average person of whatever faith or belief that they are, they don't look at the day as a sacred day. A sacred day, a holy day, a special day to the Lord. And most of us in this world, that's the main day that we're out buying and selling. That's the main day that we're doing some of our chiefest sins. That's the day you go into the club and you're going to find you somebody to commit adultery with. That's the day that you just got paid and now you're about to take your check and blow it on foolishness. But yet, in a time past, we had to be forced to act like this. Now we do it so freely. Now, we're not in a position where we're getting burned alive. We're not in a position where it has to be such a secret. But yet, the bitter constraint has already been forced. The compelling has already been done years ago to our foreparents. And now it made it easy to bring us into a situation like that. So it says, now I beseech you. Now I beseech those that read this book, the Bible, that they be not discouraged for these calamities, but that they judge those punishments not to be for destruction, but for chastising of our nation. You know, a lot of us, we fail to realize that the Most High God is our Heavenly Father, and He chastises us, He punishes us for our iniquity, for our sin, for our disobedience, just like any parent should do. Now, I know some of y'all grew up with the Idumean mindset of put the kid in timeout. Some of you might have grew up with no punishment at all. Do whatever they want. Cuss your mom out. Whatever. It doesn't matter. But for the Israelites, we're supposed to understand that chastisement is for our good. Chastisement, though it don't feel good, it's to benefit us. It's to make us better. So the Most High decided He had to do that because if you know the history of all these pages that we have in this Bible, if you know the history, we've been disobedient since in the beginning, since Genesis. And we're now in the Maccabees. We're now all the way through the Old Testament. You stop through in Numbers, Exodus, Leviticus, we were doing wrong. Don't get to Judges every time you turn a page. Israel did wickedly again. So now we have to be punished for these things. So the Lord said, I beseech those that read this book, that they be not discouraged for these calamities, but that they judge those punishments not to be for destruction, but for a chastening of our nation. Because if the Lord wanted to completely destroy us, it would have been done based on all the wickedness we did. But He has never done away with His people. He has always left a remnant of righteous people. And the righteous, I beg to say that that's you listening online right now. Those are the people who are actually trying to change their life for better and not continue to multiply their evil. So it says, verse 13, for it is a token of His great goodness when wicked doers are not suffered any long time, but forthwith punished. For not as with other nations whom the Lord patiently forbeareth to punish, till they become to the fullness of their sins, so dealeth He with us. Because a lot of us, we look at the other nations and are like, well, we can't be the chosen people because we continuously get punished. And the other nations continuously rise above us. Primarily, all the other nations that are above us in American society. You got the Caucasian man and woman we know as Esau. You got the Arabs we know as Elam. You got all these different nations that come over into America and rise above us quickly while we stay at the bottom. We're still last hired, first fired at the bottom. We keep getting the judgment over and over again, time and throughout. And it seems like the other nations don't get the judgment. But the Lord said, I got a judgment for them. Wait till their sins are fulfilled. But for you, I'm trying to correct you right now because I need to get you to the kingdom. So don't be discouraged. This ain't for your destruction. Verse 15. Lest that being come to the height of sin, afterwards He should take vengeance of us. And therefore He never withdraweth His mercy from us. Man, that's a heavy statement. God never withdraweth His mercy from us. And though He punished with adversity, yet doth he never forsake his people. Though we get punished, we're not being forsaken, no. But let this that we have spoken be for a warning unto us. And now, will he come to the declaring of the matter in few words? Eleazar, one of the principal scribes, an aged man of a well-favored countenance, was constrained to open his mouth and eat swine's flesh. So an elder of our people, a person that is favored, of good countenance, he was constrained to be one of those people that was going to be compelled to sin against God, to transgress the laws. But he choosing rather to die gloriously than to live stained with such an abomination, spit it forth and came of his own accord to the torment. So listen, brothers, listen, sisters. We have a righteous example of our forefather who would rather die than break God's commandments. He would rather do anything, whatever torment, torture, pain that he would receive, he would rather receive that than to break God's commandments. So I meditated on this and I'm like, I got to have a spirit like that to where no matter what hardship I got to go through, people may ridicule, so I may lose money, I may lose my job, I may end up sick, I may end up hurt, whatever, because like I said, in modern society, we ain't really having to live up to getting tossed off a wall headlong. But whatever the torment, the torture, the issue is that I'm going to have to go through, I have to have the spirit of Eleazar to choose to go to the torment than to live with a stain of abomination within my life. So verse 20. As it behooved them to come that are resolute and stand out against such things, as are not lawful for love of life to be tasted. You can't love to live in this society, in this world so much that you would break God's commandments. Because that means the place to come, the kingdom to come, you could give up a kingdom to live in a society that you will never be the king of. It's unfortunate, guys, but if you want this to be your kingdom, you're going to have to give up the real kingdom. If you're trying to live it up here and do it so big in this society, you could give up your spot in the kingdom. And so I meditate on this because I got to keep that in mind, that there's no sin, no pleasure of sin, no giving up of what shall I say, of freedom, no feeling compelled to do so that should be so great that I should give up my spot in the kingdom. Verse 20. Verse 21. But they that had the charge of that wicked feast, for the old acquaintance they had with the man, taking him aside, besought him to bring flesh of his own provision, such as was lawful for him to use, and make as if he did eat the flesh taken from the sacrifice commanded by the king. So they said, you know what? I know you, Eleazar. We old acquaintances. And you know what I can do for you? I don't want to see my boy. I don't want to see my friend. I don't want to see him go out like that. I got something I can do for you. I'll slide you. I'll let you bring in your own meat. Lawful meat. Lawful meat. You can have lawful meat. Just pretend that it's unlawful and eat it in front of the people. Because guess what? It was a show. People are watching to see if you're going to break God's commandments. Because you know what? A lot of times, people's faith is not as strong as others. And when they see somebody else, that could weaken their faith and cause them to transgress as well. But Eleazar, he ain't going for that. Eleazar was given this opportunity, and verse 22 says that in doing so he might be delivered from death. So Eleazar, you can eat, you can fake it and stay alive. And for the old friendship with them find favor. You can keep your friends. You can keep the friends, because you know a lot of us, that's what we value. We value our friendships so highly that we're not willing to do the right thing. We'll sin to keep people in our life. But when we read about Eleazar, ain't nothing that great. The Lord is the only thing that's good in this scenario. Keeping God's commandments is the only thing worth doing in this scenario. Verse 23, but he began to consider discreetly, and as became his age, and the excellency of his ancient years, and the honor of his gray head, whereunto he was come, and his most honest education from a child, or rather the holy law made and given by God, therefore he answered accordingly, and willed them straightways to send him to the grave. He said, kill me. When I look back on my life, I've always been honorable. I've always done the right thing. I've always kept God's commandments, and that's what people know me for. I'm not going to ruin all of the honor and integrity that I've been deemed with over this piece of meat. I'd rather die honorably than keep myself alive dishonorably. And everybody think, oh man, Eleazar, you sold out. It was more important for you to have this, and now the rest of us, what do we have to look up to? You were the one we looked up to, but now I don't know if we can look up to you like that. Matter of fact, we'll just go ahead and sell out too. If you did it, we might as well do it. Verse 24, for it becometh not our age, said he, in any wise to dissemble, whereby many young persons might think that Eleazar, being 80 years old and 10, were now gone to a strange religion. After all this time, you've been understanding God's laws, you've been keeping the commandments for all this time, and now people are going to think that you didn't finish. You didn't finish the race. So all of that race that you did, all of that running that you did, all the commandment keeping that you did, what good is it now? You're going out like this? And so they, through mine hypocrisy and desire to live a little time and a moment longer, should be deceived by me, and I get a stain on mine old age and make it abominable. Because it's hypocrisy to teach one thing and do the other. So apparently he's been teaching them the right way. He's been showing these people the right way, and now he's going to go do the opposite of what he just taught. Can't do that. He had to go out the same way. Whatever words that he taught, whatever life that he lived, he had to go out like that, because otherwise he would be a hypocrite just to live a little bit longer. He was already old. By saving himself that morsel, he wasn't buying himself much time. He wasn't gaining much out of that. He could not risk getting a stain on his life. So, verse 26, for the present time I should be delivered from the punishment of men, yet should I not escape the hand of the Almighty, neither alive nor dead. You cannot run from God. So you running from man, thinking that you're going to live a little longer, but you don't realize that there's a God that's going to punish you much worse than a man could ever do. That's why the Bible tells you to not fear what man can do with the body, but what God can do with the soul. I'm paraphrasing it, but you know what I'm talking about. So we got to have the right fear. Fear man or fear God. God has a heaven to put you in. God has a hell to put you in. God can raise you up and bring you to a lower state, but man only, he don't have that much power. Yeah, he can kill you. He can put a little pain to you, but what about your soul? And what about your name that's going to live longer, and people are going to have to look up to you? Verse 27, wherefore now manfully, changing this life, I will show myself such a one as mine age requireth, and leave a noble example to such as be young, to die willingly and courageously for the honorable and holy laws. And when he had said these words, immediately he went to the torment. Brothers, look at that. Sisters, look at that. Leave a notable example. Ask yourself, are you leaving a notable example? Are you living an example for your kids, for your brother, for your sister? A lot of us, we want to compel our family members to come into the truth. We want our brother, our sister, our mother, our father, our cousin, our best friend to come into the truth. But are we really living a good example? And should they not believe yet? What is the tenure of your life going to leave for them to think about? When they finally say, you know what? Yeah, my best friend, my brother, my whoever, all this time been telling me to get right. And now look at him. He done went back to the world. But what if they say, and he never he never deviated from the truth that he tried to teach me. And for that, I respect him. That's the type of mindset we got to have. Verse 29. They that led him, changing the goodwill that bare him a little before into hatred. So, when the people who said, hey, just fake it, just use your own meat, they began to hate him. I hate you for standing up and doing the right thing. I hate you for saying, I'd rather keep God's laws and not stay here with me. You can't stay here with me if you're going to keep God's laws. You got to break God's laws to stay here with me. And for that, I hate you. So it changed the hatred. Let's read that again. They that led him, changing the goodwill that bare him a little before into hatred, because the foresaid speeches proceeded as they thought from a desperate mind. But when he was ready to die with stripes, he groaned and said, it is manifest unto the Lord that the holy knowledge that whereas I might have been delivered from death, I now endure sore pains in body by being beaten, but in soul am well content to suffer these things because I fear him. Eleazar understood that the pain that you could strike against my body was not going to compare to the pain that the Lord could strike against your soul. That pain was only going to last for a period of time. So think about it. What we go through, it only lasts for a period of time, but our soul, that's what we got to worry about. Verse 31. And thus this man died, leaving his death for an example of a noble courage and memorial of virtue, not only unto young men, but unto all his nation. So I meditated on that, and I was like, man, this is the type of chapter in the Bible that really can encourage and motivate someone to do the right thing. When you're in the middle of a situation where you have to choose between doing right and wrong, the thing that's going to help you choose is what you're going to get out of it in the moment, you better step back and think for a minute. Yeah, I might get a little money right now. I might have a little fame right now. I might be well favored and loved by certain people. It might boost my position in life. But if it's the wrong thing, I'd rather sacrifice all of that to do the right thing because I get to leave a positive example to the young man, and not only just the young man, but my whole nation. Sometimes you got to choose to do the right thing, and it don't feel good. It don't feel like anybody in their right mind with a natural carnal instinct would say, you know what, I'm going to do whatever to survive. But that's because they're not using their mind, meaning they're not applying the scriptures and understanding what the Bible has told us, that chastisement is not for your destruction. You're really not being destroyed in that moment. You're being perfected. You're being brought to righteousness. You're being brought into the point in which you're going to be worthy of the kingdom. See, many of us, we want the kingdom, but we're not going to do what it takes to be worthy of the kingdom. So, which of you are going to stand up to do the right thing and be worthy of the kingdom? That's the question. So that's Midweek Meditations for this week. I wanted to share that with you because I'm praying that the story of Eleazar encourages you to do the right thing when faced with a situation where you might be forced to do the wrong thing. Forced meaning you've been put in bitter constraints. You've been put in a situation where doing the right thing is going to hurt you. It's going to take something away from you that you might want. So with that, I'm going to say shalom for today, but I'll be back next week for Midweek Meditations, and I pray you come back with me, all right? Shalom, Israel. Most High in Christ bless.